It begins as a game, simple, harmless, and often funny. A group of children gather in a circle. One whispers a message into the ear of the next. The message passes from person to person, each trying to repeat exactly what they heard. But when it reaches the last person, what comes out often barely resembles the original sentence. Laughter erupts. The humor lies in the distortion. A phrase that began as "the sun is shining brightly on the hill" might end as "some bees are biting tightly on a grill." It's just a game. Or is it? This game, widely known in English-speaking countries as Chinese whispers, carries a deeper lesson. It reveals how easily information can become altered as it travels, especially when it's passed verbally. The mechanics of the game mimic something far more significant: the fragility of human communication and the incredible challenge of preserving truth across time. Before we even dive into the implications this has on scripture and spiritual heritage, let's pause to consider the game's name. The term Chinese whispers emerged during a time when Westerners viewed the Chinese language and culture as confusing, complex, or indecipherable. It wasn't just a name for a party game, it was a reflection of a cultural bias. Today, many prefer to call it the telephone game or whisper down the lane, to move away from that outdated terminology. But the lesson within remains intact: messages change when they move from one source to another. So what happens when the message isn't about sunshine or grills, but about divine law, prophecy, salvation, and the very nature of God? What happens when we look at how sacred texts, like the Bible, have been passed down through generations? Could they too have fallen victim to the great whisper chain of human history? Let's travel back, not to a playground, but to the deserts of the ancient Near East. Long before printing presses, PDFs, and podcasts, long before even ink was common, messages were passed down by memory. Oral tradition was the primary mode of transmission. Stories weren't written, they were recited. The genealogies of Genesis, the laws of Moses, the prayers of David, the visions of Isaiah, all were shared in word and voice. Oral culture is not inherently unreliable. In fact, ancient peoples developed strong memory techniques to ensure accuracy. Certain stories were structured with rhythmic repetition, poetic patterns, or symmetrical parallels to help memory. Entire generations of scribes, priests, and storytellers were trained to retain texts with astonishing precision. But even so, no method is flawless. Memory falters. Accents shift. Words evolve. Eventually, oral traditions were committed to writing. Clay tablets, scrolls, parchment, ink, quills. A world of scribes rose up, tasked with preserving what they had heard. But now another layer of risk entered the equation: copying errors. Even the most careful scribes could slip. A smudge, a skipped line, a misunderstood symbol. And once an error entered a manuscript, it could be carried forward for centuries. One of the most significant moments in this process was the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the mid-20th century. These ancient manuscripts, hidden in caves near Qumran, date back over 2,000 years. Among them were portions of nearly every book of the Hebrew Bible. When compared to modern versions of the Old Testament, scholars found, amazingly, that the core content had remained consistent. Despite centuries of copying, the essence had been preserved. But they also found differences, small variations in word choice, sentence structure, and arrangement. These discoveries sparked both celebration and reflection. On one hand, they affirmed the remarkable fidelity of scriptural transmission. On the other, they reminded us that the process wasn't perfect. Like the whisper game, even small distortions could creep in. translation adds yet another layer. The Bible was originally written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Over time, it was translated into Latin, Coptic, Syriac, German, English, and countless other languages. Each translation required choices: how to best capture an ancient phrase in a modern tongue, how to interpret idioms, metaphors, and theological terms. Should the Hebrew word ruach be translated as spirit, wind, or breath? Does the Greek logos mean word, reason, or something else entirely? And so, with each translation, each copy, each interpretation,